final question, because I know you got to run, and I appreciate you taking this time to come on the show. It's really been a great conversation to have with you. I mean, how do you see this playing out in the Ukraine in the next, the next couple of days and weeks? Because obviously China and Russia are China's already said, like, we're okay. We support Russia. We say we've got the whole global community, and you're talking about maybe 20, like, Asia's not with us. Like, Africa's not with us. Like, Middle East isn't with us. Like, this is typical, like, the whole global community. It's like everyone recognizes Juan Guaido. No, they don't.
It's like the U.S. and two countries usually.
Yeah. So it's like, you've got NATO that has to come along. So how do you see? I mean, are we literally going to get into a ground war in the Ukraine with American soldiers? I mean, are we really going to send American soldiers have NATO troops roll into the Ukraine and get into a ground war? I mean, is that going to happen?
I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't necessarily predict. But I will say that one thing I'm fairly certain of is that if the United States led that kind of charge, that this slow rolling collapse of the American empire would occur very rapidly. The Rand Corporation, much of the US's military brass, from the lowly researchers all the way up to the top, they know they cannot fight a ground war with Russia, with China. Interestingly enough, I watched the Battle of Lake Changjin recently, which was a Chinese film about the aid to Korea during the Korean War that China provided against the United States, pushed back the United States at the Yalu River, lost hundreds of thousands of people, but successfully pushed the U.S. back to the point where it was a turning point. The United States was now on the defensive, and its aims to destroy Korea and then hopefully lead into China were completely shattered. And as I was watching this film, I was thinking, this is a very strong message. It's a very strong message of unity, that China is ready, if there is a war, that it will not be a winnable one. And China's foreign ministry says this all the time, that there's no interest in a war, but we're not going to back down if that's what the United States is going to pursue, especially with regards to Taiwan, which is really the hottest flashpoint. But really, the entire Asia Pacific is being militarized with this potential scenario in mind, a completely and utterly ridiculous and counterproductive one. But it's on the table. It's not off the table. This wouldn't be happening if it were off the table in such a rapid manner. And the same goes for Russia, right? I mean, these are two countries that, despite whatever divisions they have on other issues internally, there is one issue that unites nearly the entire populations of both, and that is that these countries will not go back to the era of time, whether it's China's century of humiliation from mid-1840s to 1949, or whether it's post-Soviet Russia, right, from that devastating decade-long period. There's a pretty big consensus that there's no appetite for that. There's no appetite to going back to that. And people will fight to the death to make sure that doesn't happen. So it would be an utterly stupid move on the part of the United States, because it would bring all these contradictions to the point of utter collapse. The United States economy couldn't handle it.
Oh, God.
Its military wouldn't be able to handle it. Everything would fall apart. In the society, who knows what would happen? I can't predict what would happen, but all of these problems would come to the fore.
Yeah, you bring a great point. I don't think Americans have the appetite to send we would have to send several million young men and women to a ground battle, because we would be going up against tens of millions of Russians and Chinese. Does America really want to? Do we have 20 million people we want to send over there? I mean, especially like it would be young people, and most millennials and Gen Zs I'm meeting, they're anti-capitalist. They're socialist. I mean, they're just like, what? Yep. Like, they're not. The most criticism I get is from like Gen X, my generation, Gen X liberals who are like, stop criticizing Biden. You're helping Trump, or whatever. Like, too many episodes of West Wing are bouncing around in their heads that they can't handle a criticism of this. Yeah, it's really, and I think the point that you just made, I think Putin called America's bluff in this, because Putin went, and I think the other thing that the American media hasn't discussed, and you and I haven't even brought it up yet, but it bears mentioning. It has not been mentioned. Now, this I talked to Susie Dawson, who's in Russia, who's in Moscow, and she said, Graham, because she's watching other news sources, she says, everyone seems to forget Putin was like me, I want NATO. I don't want NATO expansion. And then the Ukrainian president said, nuclear weapons we're going to pursue that possibly. And that's when Putin went, nope. Like he just said, no, I'm not having nukes on my border. And no one, of course, talks about it in the American media. Because again, we went bananas in the 1960s at the idea of nukes in Cuba. I mean, literally, we were on the brink of World War III at just at ships coming. And so Putin was like, absolutely not. He's already got a bunch of nukes pointed at him 800 miles away in Western Europe. So like, I think he called our bluff and totally. Went, okay, you guys want to get into a ground war? World War III, we all die. So we all know that. So you want to get into a ground war? We ain't going anywhere. And the 1.5 billion Chinese aren't going anywhere. And, America tried to take over its own capital, and all they did was take selfies and steal a podium. So I don't think America's ready.
No. And I want to it's totally true. And I just want to get into because the original question was, what do I see happening?
Right.
And I kind of see, because of the far-fetchedness of the scenario we've just been talking about, what I think is going to happen is, and I think you're correct here. Russia did call the United States' bluff, and it did so out of necessity, really, because I mean the threats, the provocations, they were just mounting and mounting and mounting, right? Zelensky did a 180 in a matter of days, right? From saying, cool the jets to the United States, to receiving such intense backlash after that he became the puppet that the United States want him to be, hoped he would be, and what he's been in a lot of ways. And now he's saying all in, right? The weapons, NATO, he's saying, oh yeah, let's try to do this. I don't even think that's in the cards, because the US doesn't want to treat Ukraine on equal footing with the real European powers, right? Ukraine is not seen as this lily white country. It's still seen in this way of like, oh yeah, you're just the chip. You're just the chip in that Slavic hell over there. Like that is how the United States sees, because the United States is this racist, warmongering country. It doesn't care about these little statelets. But I think what's going to happen is we'll see. I think in the best possible scenario, the most realistic possible scenario for me is that this bluff will eventually lead to some kind of stalemate, right? Politically, between all the countries, right? Some kind of cooling of tensions. I do think a lot of the major problems will persist, because the agenda is not going to change from the United States. Ukraine is still going to have what it has. I don't think it's going to give up, although Russia wants the Ukraine to give up all these weapons and all these military ties with the US. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I do see a cooling off period. But I think that this is kind of going to be the strategy for the United States from here on out in Ukraine, and honestly, everywhere. I think, given the level of political crisis that the United States is in, there's going to need to be periodic flashpoints that are addressed in this kind of bullish manner, in a way that grabs this attention, shows the US is still the aggressor, still the number one, still dominant. And it's going to happen not just with regard to Ukraine, but it's going to happen in the Asia Pacific in terms of this larger new Cold War on China. I think it's going to happen everywhere where the United States sees opportunities to roll back any alternative to its world in global dominance. So I think that's really where this is going. And every time the United States does this, I think we'll see the consequences of it really bear down on the United States, because this has actually been a political disaster for Joe Biden himself. I think this could be, honestly, the end of Joe Biden's administration if things persist the way they're going. Well, polls are showing that people in the United States are not happy with the way this has been addressed, for better or for worse. Maybe there are some who want to see the United States thump its chest harder. And I'm sure there are also many that want to see the United States not do that. So I think there's a divided population, but not an appetite for this kind of fear mongering and kind of dead end politics that the US is employing in this situation. And it seems to only be hurting the current administration.
I mean, the when you talk about Americans' appetite, I totally agree. And look, if this drags on and a couple of months from now, gas is $6-7 a gallon, inflation is already through the roof, and Americans are going to be their knowledge of geopolitical is going to be like, I don't care. All I know is we're tangled up in this Ukraine bullshit, and I can't, it's costing me $90 to fill up my minivan to take my kids to school. So the hell with it. Like, the Americans are just going to go, no.
Right.
I mean, which is just, and I hope then that Americans just kind of unify in this, get us out of this. No more of these ridiculous. We're done. We're just done. Like, I hope Americans wake up to this fact of, like, the democratically controlled Congress just approved $768 billion for the war budget, including 51 members of the Progressive Caucus. The democratically controlled Senate said, oh, not 768. Here's an extra 10 billion, $778 billion. And Americans, I think, are hopefully waking up to the fact that we're spending way too much money on war. If we cut our military budget in half, we would still outspend China, the next country spending. We would still outspend them by $200 billion if we cut our budget in half. And Americans are just like, I think they're finally at least waking up to this. Like, what are we spending all this money on? There's people hungry. And then if a financial crisis hits in the middle of this, which it could, I watch all these financial experts, man. And they're like, this is a Ponzi scheme. We keep bailing out the banks. We keep printing money. We've bailed out Wall Street while the average American just in the last 2 years is facing evictions and all this other stuff. If finance was corrupt, people are going to be like, and like you've just been saying, this might be the beginning of the end for America if we really double down on this, in this war. So anyway, man, I really appreciate you taking your time. Tell everybody who might be new to you where they can follow you, what your shows are, and how they can to follow the work that you're doing.
Sure. So you can catch me weekly, usually at blackagendareport.com. I write a column. I'm writing more on Substack as well, so you can follow me there at chroniclesofhaifong.substack.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Spirit of Ho. You can find me on YouTube at The Left Lens. So just search that and you can find there, subscribe to the channel. And then you can support me at patreon.com/DannyHaifong. That's where you can support and find all of my work.
Danny, thank you so much, man. Appreciate the work you're doing. I'm glad we finally got you on the show, and, we'll have you back on again. And if you ever need me to come on your show to talk about, Bitcoin or Epstein or whatever, I can, those are my two wheelhouses. I can talk about all that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really appreciate it, Graham. I've been following. Thanks for all that you're doing. I know that there's been a lot of divisions on certain issues like COVID, but I really appreciate, your stance for peace, your concern for working people, for oppressed people, and your consistency. It's really it's really great, and it's really a service to the movement. So thank you.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate that. I tell people, you might not agree with me, but I believe what I'm saying, and no one's paying me to say it. So yeah. this is the way it goes down. All right, my friend. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
All right, later, Danny.
Bye.
Danny Haifong, everybody. That was amazing. We're gonna put his information up on the screen here. That was the kind of conversations I like having on the show. So, hey, everybody, thanks for watching. We are still in our 9th month of demonetization from YouTube. So support what we're doing at patreon.com/Graham Elwood or rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. It's free to sign up, and there's a premium level at $10 a month. And for that, you get everybody on the platform's premium content. Myself, Lee Camp, Ron Placone, Jimmy Dore, Whitney Webb, Kim Iverson, Abby Martin, and many, many others. You can also support what we're doing at Venmo at Graham-Elwood and go to grahamelwood.com. We have a PayPal button and a PO box. I also have crypto wallets, which are all in the show notes. Thanks for supporting what we do.